This is Democracy Watch. Mark, as we're seeing right now, judges across the country are really serving as a major bulwark against Donald Trump's worst excesses, Elon Musk's worst excesses in this administration. And Republicans are becoming increasingly agitated at the fact that they're not able to just barrel ahead with their agenda because these judges are standing in the way and committing the cardinal sin of upholding the law. So there was a tweet that I'll put on the screen right now about how an El Salvadorian lawmaker fired a top prosecutor and judges. And then Elon responded to that tweet, writing, "The only way to restore rule of the people in America is to impeach judges. No one is above the law, including judges. This is what it took to fix El Salvador. Same applies to America." So first and foremost, so as not to bury the lead here, because we're going to get into the El Salvadorian stuff in a minute, but what is the standard to be even able to impeach judges in this country, just to assuage any fears for folks who see what Elon is saying?
Yeah, so impeachment actually has two steps. The first is the actual impeachment, which is done in the House of Representatives by a simple majority vote. To convict someone who has been impeached, right? Impeached means that there's sort of a preliminary threshold showing of that you should be removed, but then you get a trial in the Senate, and to be removed in the Senate, you need a 2/3 vote of the Senate. So these folks are not going to get impeached given the narrow margin of the House control there, and they're definitely not going to get convicted in the Senate. So this is nothing more than bluster that we're seeing. But I can't help but note a couple of things about this, Brian, at the outset. The first is I am glad to see that Mr. Musk agrees that no one is above the law, because I could swear there is someone else who recently posted on social media that they thought they might be above the law. So Perhaps Elon Musk should remind that other person that, as he said, no one is above the law. But the second thing is, Senator Lee, if only you took seriously the removal of people who deserved impeachment. I mean, I can think of one guy who was impeached for helping incite a violent insurrection in the nation's capital, trying to, instigate perhaps the hanging of a vice president or two, remember something like that's just standing in the back of my mind. And I believe, Mr. Senator Mike Lee, you voted against conviction there. So I don't think these judges have anything to worry about. I think these judges are doing their jobs. They are not above the law, but their job is to help apply the law. And I think Mike Lee really is not in much of a moral high ground position to discuss the need to remove people who have been impeached.
So this has been a recurring theme where Elon Musk has come forward with this kind of confused idea that judges shouldn't have jurisdiction to prevent aspects of the president's agenda from moving forward. Of course, what he doesn't talk about is that they have that ability to prevent the president's agenda from moving forward if the agenda is illegal. But can you talk about that idea, this mistaken notion that Republicans have that all of these judges shouldn't be able that one single judge somewhere in this country having the power to prevent a major executive action from proceeding is somehow anti-democratic?
Yeah, so, I was reflecting on this morning that I used to post a lot on X, when it was called Twitter. I run a site called Democracy Docket, and we post a lot of content about democracy in the courts. And inevitably, whenever I posted content about Democracy Docket, there would be a series of right-wing trolls who would say, it's not a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic. I'm sure Brian, I can see on your face you have been the recipient of this before.
Yeah. This is a rectangle is a square, but a square is not a rectangle.
Correct. Precisely. Right. So for all of that crowd, a constitutional republic is called a constitutional republic because you have a constitution. Right. The whole theory of our government is that the Constitution is supreme and that under that constitutional order, you have checks and balances and you have separation of powers. And each branch of government has overlap with the other branches, and each branch of government can prevent excesses by the other branches, and that part of that is in a constitutional republic that the court's role is to determine what the law is and whether the executive branch or Congress has violated it, and also to determine whether or not the actions of the executive branch or Congress violate the Constitution. And that ultimately it is their role, the job of each of one of those federal judges they don't like, to render those opinions. And if the executive branch doesn't like it, they can appeal it to higher court and finally to the U.S. Supreme Court. But that, at the end of the day, that is what makes us a constitutional republic. Now, I will note, Brian, that since Donald Trump has become president, I don't hear so much about constitutional republics anymore.
Yeah.
Now what they say is he was elected by the American people.
And so everything he does means that he has a mandate to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the hypocrisy is really overwhelming. The fact that it comes out in social media is not surprising. The fact that a U.S. senator like Mike Lee, who knows better, frankly, is part of this is just a sign of the moral bankruptcy of the Republican Party. Mike Lee is a smart man. He knows what the role of the courts are. He knows it's the job of judges to be doing this. He knows that this is not something that is anything other than them doing their job. But yet he has become, part of the right-wing MAGA movement because he presumably thinks he has to, or because he's undergone some transformation. Who knows? And in a nutshell, this summarizes all of the problems that America faces right now with a lack of a real Republican Party in Congress.
Yeah, this is Mike Lee going to the Elise Stefanik School of Integrity when it comes to upholding his values.
The only thing that I want to add about that is that Elise Stefanik, who was at one point a moderate Republican, then became, sort of morphed into something that is like unrecognizable from how she began her political career. She, climbed the leadership ladder in the House, got this appointment, probably the pinnacle of her career, got this appointment in the Trump administration. But now it turns out that her colleagues who, cheered her on, they're as craven as she is. And they're actually not letting her leave the House because they only have a one-seat majority. Right. So I find it precious that, here it is, Elise Stefanik is being held up from her real dream job by the same level of pure opportunistic craven politics that she became a part of.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You had also mentioned Democracy Docket. Just a quick reminder for anybody who's watching right now, if you're not signed up for Democracy Docket and you want to support the amazing work that Mark and his team are doing across the country to protect democracy, to make sure to fight against the worst excesses of this administration in the courts, which really is ground zero against what this government is doing, please make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Mark, I do want to draw your attention to the fact that Elon said that this is what it took to fix El Salvador. What is your reaction to the fact that the pinnacle in terms of what the U.S. justice system should look like as far as the shadow president of the United States, Elon Musk, is concerned, is that we should be more like El Salvador when it comes to our justice system? Yeah,
this is a new strand in American politics that MAGA has brought that, frankly, has shocked even me. The thing about American politics has over the years been this concept of American exceptionalism, that we are the leader of the free world, that we lead a multinational pro-democracy coalition called NATO, that we set the standard for the best and the brightest engineers, the best and the brightest talent, we're entrepreneurs, but also that we have the best legal system, the best, business system, regulatory environment, so that all of those things can succeed. And what's really interesting is to watch that Trumpism has really turned into a movement of denigrating the United States. I mean, it's about telling us that we are the fools of the world, that everyone's taking advantage of us. We are now siding with, Russia and Belarus against, rather than leading, being the shining beacon of American democracy and foreign policy. And now you see, as you said, a denigration of our legal system, a legal system which has been the envy of the world and allowed, frankly, people to become fabulously rich because there is a stable rule of law. There is a predictable, enforcement of contracts. There is, a judiciary that is independent of politics, at least not as much as we should hope, but largely not a political branch. And to watch the Republican Party now, just at every turn, denigrate our legal system and say, we're not as strong as this country and our legal system's not as good as that country, is really just jarring. I mean, even in a world of a lot of jarring things coming out of the Trump administration.
Well, I think it's actually one step further than that, because it's not just the denigration of our system, but it's the simultaneous praise of autocratic systems. I mean, if you're looking at El Salvador, the new president there, who's been in office for a couple years, I may be mispronouncing this, but Bukele is engulfed in human rights crises. If you look at other presidents that this administration has cozied up to, previously Jair Bolsonaro, of course you'll have Erdogan, you'll have Putin. I mean, just as we're.
And remember who he sent love letters to in his first administration?
You have Kim Jong-un. So this is them coming out and saying the quiet part out loud, that our priority in the world is no longer to defend the prospect of peace, no longer to defend the very notion of democracy, but rather to figure out where we can derive the most financial benefit, regardless of what the systems of government are. And so if that means aligning ourselves with dictators, then and completely upending the post-World War II order that has been responsible for the longest period of peace in on the planet, that in recorded American history, then so be it.
Yeah, I mean, if you are a member of a political party and voted for a candidate who is attacking Canada and sucking up to Vladimir Putin, you need to rethink your priorities. If you are part of a political party that is denigrating the United States' judicial system and holding up El Salvador's, you need to reevaluate your political party. If you are part of a political party that thinks that somehow being aligned with Belarus is better than being aligned with Great Britain and France and our traditional allies, you really need to reevaluate your stance in politics. But this is somehow where we have wound up as a country. I mean, we have wound up in a country in which one of the two great political parties, a political party that I have spent my career disagreeing with over a lot of important policies, I think that George Bush was wrong about so much. I think Hillary Clinton would have been a tremendously important president. I think Kamala Harris would have been a tremendously important president. I think Bill Clinton was a great president. I've had my disagreements with the Republican Party on just about every imaginable issue. But where we are today is it is a Republican Party that is unrecognizable. And I just think that when a Mike Lee, of all people, who's, has a long family history with the Republican Party, is willing to just sacrifice that to please this tin pot dictator wannabe in the White House, it's just a really sad thing.
Yeah, perfectly put. Well, again, for those who are watching right now, to support the work that Mark and his team are doing, please sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.